open those gates, a lot of people drive down that road, and they all have a lot of money, but there's nowhere to leave any of it. I mean, we have to go almost 7 miles a lot of times, like if you want a can of Coke, right? I mean, the store's only open so many hours, and it's like anything you need, you gotta go somewhere. But, so I see it as, there's a couple of niche revenue possibilities. One is the boomer crowd who are looking for somewhere to go, and we have something. We just have to market it. We have to figure out a plan. And the other is ecotourism with the younger generation, that they're free, free and easy. When you go out to Highlands Bike Mountain over there in Northfield, the parking lot is jammed. And it's not jammed with beater old Accords or something. I mean, we're talking about these $100,000 Mercedes campers, and they're pulling $5,000 bikes off the back. And they're dressed from head to toe. They probably have $2,000 of gear on, before they even get on the bike. And it's like, can't we catch some of that? Disc golf, same thing. A disc is like $25, and they have like 20 of them in a bag. And then they got their little cart that's like $200, and and they're just looking for somewhere to go to hit these chains. This is the perfect place. It's like, you almost have to drive through. If you're in Bristol or Franklin, there's a good chance you have to drive through Hill. But we need like a toll booth, But like Robin Hood. I mean, let's put some of these guys to work up there on the hill, right? We can get the money out of these people. People have the skills, right? You just got to use them the right way. Yeah, I think there's ways to make money. I really do.
Yeah, as far as the housing and the abandonment of the homes that are in town, what few there are, yeah, there's protocol to that. There's circumstances that lie into that. That could be, if they are back on their taxes, they could be elderly and can't afford the taxes. Or there's a hardship in that process. So they have to go through protocol before a town could take a home for back taxes. It's sad that happens. By the time that happens, it does turn around, like Tom said, and they end up having their home saved. As far as revenue, a good portion of this town is made up of conservation land, which is a beautiful part of the properties. I mean, it's beautiful here. We have magnificent views. We have a beautiful river. We have trail systems galore. We have a great snowmobile trails, but we have to allow that to happen. We have to allow revenue to come in by, I think it was, how many years ago it was, that there was somebody, it was actually, I think it was an uncle, John Moses, wanted to put a campground in up on Murray Hill, and that got shot down. It was only a 7-acre or 12-acre lot, and it got shot down because people just didn't want it because it was going to affect the water system in town. So, I mean, there are approaches to the land that's here, but it's the people, it's the marketing of it. And if it's not here, then the little town of Hill isn't going to bring it in. So.
Just want to add one more thing. Mary Ann's right. There were attempts in the past for some development that was voted down by the town. Some larger developments that would have brought in some revenue, and those were voted down because the people didn't want it. There's also another source of revenue. So the town is supposed to be compensated for the loss of the old town, the old village. Back in 1939, I think it was, Congress passed an act when it was decided that some towns in New Hampshire, I think it's Hill, Hopkinton, I think Swansea and Ware, we're going to lose some land to the flood control dams. Hill was hardest hit because Hill was losing the village. The other towns were losing some farmland. So they were losing a couple $1,000s a year in tax revenue, and Hill was losing the vast majority of its tax revenue. So I forget the exact figures now. I worked on this back in 2012. I was working with, I was president of the New Hampshire Assessors Association at the time, and I was working, and I was on the legislative committee for the New Hampshire Assessors Association, and I was working with a senator on a bill to have these towns made whole on the revenue. What happened was that the state of New Hampshire, the state of Massachusetts, and a little bit from Connecticut, there's a little bit of money coming from Connecticut, these three states were supposed to make these towns whole on their lost revenue. And Massachusetts just decided, even though this was a congressional act, Massachusetts decided to stop paying their share of the lost revenue. So New Hampshire for a while, and again, I forget all the details, this was 13 years ago, New Hampshire, if I remember correctly, decided to pay Massachusetts' share of the revenue. And that, I think they did that for a few years and then decided not to do that anymore. So from what I can remember, the numbers I remember were we were supposed to get $110,000 in revenue. And it dropped down to $30,000, and I think it's still at $30,000. So there's a good chunk of money, which would be a large share of our budget if we could get that revenue back. And I know there's some efforts still to recoup that revenue. It's going to take a real effort to get this passed. It's got to go back through the legislature again. There's a lot of work to get this done. It didn't pass the legislature back in 2012, even though we had a senator sponsoring the bill, and we worked hard to get this passed. It still didn't pass. So it's a large, huge effort to work on this and get it passed, but that is a huge amount of money that would really offset our tax rate.
I'd like to add just one other thing on the housing, which is, I don't know how many we have in town, but there are a number of what I would call squatters, where people are living on houses that living on property that doesn't have a dwelling on it, and therefore it's not taxed at the rate that a house would be, or something in a trailer park or whatever. And there have been letters sent out, but I don't think we have a policy to directly address that. But whatever we do, I think it should be fair and equal. So I think if you're going to live in this town, I think you should pay equal to what the other folks pay to use the amenities that are part of the town budget.
I'd like to just touch back on what Rick just said about the village, the old village. So I know Stephen Thompson has been working with Rod Wood, the assessor, over this past reevaluation, in which he spent a lot of time. He dug up some old maps that actually showed what the town looked like back when it was a village there. And I guess Rod Wood did come up with an evaluation of what those properties would be worth today as they are. And I think the number was like 10 times what it originally was. So I know Stephen is working on that. I think the board is still working on that to see if we can resolve those monies that should have came to the town, but were reduced to a much lower number over the years.
Joanne Irving, Mountain View Drive. Over the years, we've seen our town hall need paint and a roof, and we had a broken water pipe. I would like to know if you folks have a plan going forward to start working on our infrastructure and repairing these things before it's an 11th hour emergency.
As far as infrastructure, we definitely need to take care of what we have. you don't take care of it, and it's not gonna serve you well, it's not gonna last. Our roads, a lot of the catch basins here in the village, and I'm not trying to say the village is more important than another road, but there's a lot of problems. More population, a lot easier for somebody to get hurt in the village, they step in a catch basin that's 12 inches deep. I had talked with Greg, he said there was a number of them in town that need to be done. They weren't built correctly to begin with, so it wasn't just a matter of fixing them, it was a matter of completely rebuilding them. As far as the buildings, paint's not cheap. Even house paint, no paint is cheap. Shingles are not cheap, and we need to put aside every year some money that is earmarked. So before that 11th hour comes, but we know it's coming, take care of the problem. You're never gonna get rid of all the emergency problems. There's always gonna be something that pops up that you don't know about. But if you maintain stuff, that's gonna be a lot less.
But we need a maintenance plan.
Right, so the maintenance plan, we need, within the capital reserves, you need reserves for replacement for all these items. The roof, the paint, plumbing repairs, whatever else you can think of. So that would be probably step number one in a maintenance plan, is to make sure that we have the money put away. It's painful to do that every year, but in the long run, it's less painful than having a huge bill come up one year and we have to find the funds to repair whatever needs to be repaired. But on a maintenance plan, yeah, it would be a good idea to have something in writing, something put in writing where we replace the town hall roof in a certain year. We know that we're going to get 15 or 20 years out of it. So we have a plan that in 15 years, we need to replace our roof again. In the meantime, we're putting the money away for that repair. I worked in one town that they used GIS. It was a larger town, they had more money, but they used GIS for this maintenance plan. So everything that they did, cleaning out culverts and storm basins, that all went into the GIS. So when they went out to repair something, the